Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I'm your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Chiara Motley to the show. Welcome, Chiara.
Hello.
It's great to have you on finally, because I was telling you off air that we've had Bess on the show, of course, Jennifer Pratt, and a lot of people were asking about George. So you were one of the original voices of George for the Her Interactive series. You did a couple games, but before we jump into the story of George, of course, I wanted to hear about how you kind of jumped into the voiceover industry yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that one of the other people you interviewed might have mentioned this actor, but Jonah Van Sprecken was an actor in Seattle when I moved there, and I moved there right after college. I was pretty young, and we did my first show together at Book It Repertory Theater called Snow Falling on Cedars, and we became friends. And he just mentioned that he thought that I would be really great for this video game and for voiceovers in general. And so he passed my name along to Her Interactive, and they called me in. And it was actually my first voiceover audition ever. And I was incredibly nervous. And I remember, driving to their offices and going in and doing the audition and leaving and being like, there's no way. And sort of often I find in those circumstances is when you book it. So then, of course, it was a couple weeks, but I got a call and they asked me if I wanted to play the part of George, and of course I did. And then it ended up being, an ongoing gig for a couple of years. And I even think I did one game when I had already left and moved to Denver, and now I'm based out of New York. So I stuck around for a while with the game. I really loved it. And then once I was in New York, it was impossible to get back every time they needed it. So I really appreciated, I'm not sure how true this is of all games and voiceover work, but they're pretty engaged in the process, and they're really committed to their stories, what they've created and the characters they've created. And that's a really nice thing, because I feel like a lot of times you go into a booth and you sort of are told, all right, read these lines, and not given a lot of feedback except for pickups. And that, at least for me, was not at all the case. They were really engaged in what they were creating.
And what was that audition process like for you? You came in and you read a couple of sides, or did they talk to you and just want to get to know you personally?
Yeah, gosh, it was a while ago, but I recall, I think it was just a little bit of talking to me, and then I read a little bit of text. I don't even think it was necessarily from Nancy Drew. And then I know they asked me if I could sort of play around with different voices. I know that's something Jonah does incredibly well. And they ended up using me on one segment of a game where I did a couple different voices, but mostly was just George, which is similar to my own natural voice. But they did have me in that audition process. They said, can you do something that's a little pitched high or nasally, or can you give us a couple voices, or can you do any accents? So I did a British accent. I think that's the only accent I did. I know that what they told me is her tag was a tough tomboy. So that sort of was in my head, a good friend of Nancy Drew's and Bess's, tough tomboy. And that's sort of what I went with. But there was no visual attached for me when I first started recording.
Some of the games that you were involved in, and I'll go over them. The first one was one of the Dossier games, The Lights, Camera, Curses, and you were a gossiper in that one. So that was 2008, and then followed by Ransom of the Seven Ships, Shadow at Water's Edge, The Captive Curse, Alibi and Ashes. So these games, there's a lot of mystery to them, and Bess and George are helping out Nancy to the full extent. So how much information are they giving you on each mystery? Because I from what I know from a lot of other individuals who voice the other characters, they really don't know anything except the sides that they are given. But, you and Bess are more incorporated with the stories in these games. So it seems like you guys have to know a little bit more.
Yeah, when we get the material, we just get the material. And obviously we don't get the whole context of it. But I always was at least told some basic given circumstances before I went in and recorded, especially if it came to like someone being kidnapped or, one of my favorites was they explained to me, okay, so it's a little odd, but you're going to have to make these sounds because in this series, monkeys are going to be dropping coconuts on your head. And so they just, they wanted to explain a little bit of what was going on so that I was able to do, an appropriate response.
What do you think is the best part about George just working with Nancy and Bess, and what's the best part of them working with her?
I mean, I think it's just so fun when three friends and also three friends who have different things to bring to the table get together. I always think of Nancy as sort of the anchor, obviously, the heroine of, all the stories. And she's really thoughtful. And as we say, like, I know she's always finding something. She's always getting into the middle of a mystery. And I think Bess is sort of a little more of the nervous, awkward type. And George is just no nonsense. She really is, I think, brings to the table no nonsense. Let's get it done. Let's keep our heads clear attitude. I love that she is, just able to navigate the technical world with panache.
Well, out of all the games that you have worked on, have you played all of them? And is there one in particular that you like?
You know what? I haven't played any of them, if you can believe it. I have a couple friends and cousins who have played all the games and love them, and I just haven't done it. I was thinking about it this morning when I was sort of looking over the games, and I think when I recorded them, when I first started recording them, they weren't available. And then I got sent a couple of the games by Her Interactive. And I have been a pretty transient person just because I moved from Seattle to Denver for theater and then to New York. And then I'm usually on the road more than half of the year. Last year I was out of town for 8 months on tour doing a show. And so I sort of realized this morning, wow, looking over sort of some of the footage online, I was like, wow, I really can't believe that I haven't sat down and played this game. So yeah, I'm going to do it. I think for recording, my favorite recording was the one of saving Bess from being kidnapped, just because there was so much variety in that one and really ability to like have high stakes and personal, interactions and personal relationships.
But I do have some questions for George herself. So I'd like to welcome George to the show. Hello, George. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's so great to be here.
I love it when you were on board in person for these mysteries with Nancy. But when Nancy's not around, what is the typical mystery that you usually solve? I know Ned said that he likes to solve the mystery of his missing keys, but what in particular do you like to solve?
I find myself solving a lot of other people's problems in terms of computers and different gadgets. I'm just always fixing my friend's broken computer, or even sometimes when my mom can't get the TV and the cable to go. So that's always what I'm doing.
But I know that Bess was talking to me about the ice cream parlor in River Heights, which we get to see sometimes in some of the other games like Alibi and Ashes. But what is one of your favorite ice cream flavors to get there, or a sundae that you would suggest if I ever were in River Heights?
I think I would suggest, I love chocolate, so I would suggest either just doing their double chocolate fudge ice cream straight up on a cone, or they have a triple fudge sundae with a ton of caramel and a couple sprinkles, and that is my favorite sundae of all time.
Ooh, now that sounds way chocolatey, but I'm on board.
I'm a chocoholic. Yeah, I know.
Well, what is your favorite hangout spot in River Heights besides, being over at your house or Bess's house or Nancy's house?
I really like being outdoors. So I just love walking in the park, running, playing soccer sometimes with my friends. Anytime I can be outside, it's good for me.
And when it comes to technology in particular, as you said, you're a complete Einstein with that. But is there anything in particular that you would like to create later down the line? Would you like to have a specific type of invention that would be your own and would put you on the map?
Yeah, I'm working on that as we speak. I think that I would love to create something that helps solve mysteries. And there's so many options when it comes to that. So I'm just trying to figure out, with the technical knowledge that I have, what's going to help best myself, Nancy, and other detectives like ourselves solve mysteries faster and with more precision. You know what? I would love to have created night vision goggles. I think that would have been such a cool invention to have my name on. And I also would love to have created like you know how right now it's starting to get really popular to put on glasses that you could even hook up to your iPhone that can become, full dimension glasses. I think that is going to be a huge wave of the future. And I wish I had gotten in on that before whoever did.
And my last question for you, George, is if you could travel to any location to solve a mystery and or not solve a mystery, because we don't want to have another ransom of the 7 ships again, but what country or city would you love to visit and do so at?
That's such a good question. I mean, I feel like I would love to go to so many different places, but when you said that, what popped into my head immediately was South Africa. And I think that I would just love to go there in general, but a mystery there, I mean, it's tempting. It's tempting to solve a mystery in South Africa amongst lions and tigers and giraffes.
Oh my. It's too crazy. But thank you so much for being on the show, George.
Thanks so much.
And scene. Oh my gosh, I love George, I love Bess, I love Nancy. I love how it's like this great trio. Was there ever a trio that you grew up with besides Bess, George, and Nancy that you absolutely adored, whether they be male or female?
Yeah, I grew up, it's so funny when you talk about Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I definitely grew up with Lord of the Rings. And I grew up with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I'm sort of thinking about, the 3 kids in Aslan, which is, I guess, technically 4. But I sort of think of stuff like that. Did you ever, I don't remember now if it's 3 or 4, but The Boxcar Children is a series that I think is incredible, a book series that's about sort of a group of kids. I think it's probably 3, maybe 4. And it's sort of a very similar dynamic of like banding together against all odds, building each other up. So that's a good one for your listeners, The Boxcar Children.
Well, before we end the show, I want to make sure I open the floor to you to ask about some of your more recent projects and also to tell about your website too, because I know listeners would love to stay up to date with any social media pages and any websites you have too.
Yeah, I am right now currently an actress based in New York City. I got back this past March from doing 8 months on the road in a tour of King Charles III in Seattle, San Francisco, and DC. And I played the ghost of Princess Diana. It's a really incredible play by a young 36-year-old British playwright that was on Broadway and in the West End. And then this was the first tour of it. And it's in Shakespearean verse, but it's all about the modern day situation. If the Queen of England died, what would happen? So it's a pretty cool thing if anyone ever gets the chance to see it. And so I was involved with that for 8 months, got back. I'm here in New York auditioning. I'm creating a web series with a playwright from DC. And that's what's going on for me. And my website is www.chiaramotley.com. And on there you can see clips from a commercial I've done and my reel, and I'm a singer, and there's a little bit of voiceover on there as well, production photos, etc. So feel free to check it out, and always updating what I'm doing.
Do you have any advice for those who are looking to pursue a career in acting or voiceover, even in New York or LA or wherever?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's no reason you have to be in New York or LA if your heart is telling you that you want to be in a different place. I think the world's getting smaller and smaller, and you can absolutely pursue a career in a lot of these arenas in other areas like Philly or Seattle. I have actor friends in both. But I would say if you're in New York, can't speak so much to LA, but in New York, I think the biggest thing I've learned is you really can't look outwards. I mean, no matter what, you are a small fish in a big pond, and the only way you get through it is by not comparing yourself. My husband likes to remind me all the time, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's a great thing to remember if you are in any sort of career that is competitive and jab full of people who want to do it, which acting is. And I just think the best thing to do in New York is always be, true to yourself. What can you bring to a role? What can you bring to an audition? How can you enjoy it for yourself? Because then you won't be looking at the person sitting next to you and going, well, what do they have? And maybe they're, taller than me, or their hair is the right color, or they're a better actor. Because, we all can only bring what we can bring. And that is special enough. And if you can kind of hold on to that, you're going to be true and authentic, and you're going to enjoy it, which is the most important thing.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the podcast. And I'm so glad that we have you and had you as a George. I hope maybe we may have you back soon. You never know.
Anytime.
So, yeah, that would be great. And, my last question is, if you could describe your experience working for Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would it be?
Lucky.